All right, it is 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call our meeting to order. Megan, will you take the roll, please?
Davis? Here. Lampy? Here. Board?
Here.
Bartz?
Here.
Blanky?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Schmid?
Here.
Wetzel?
Here.
Moldenhauer?
Nope, not tonight. Very good. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on our agenda is the minutes of the council meeting from October 3rd. Anyone have any comments or questions on those minutes? All right, very good. The next item is an opportunity for comments and suggestions from citizens present. I know we have a few. Megan?
Craig Wortman? 1549 Boulder Road.
Good evening. I'm here to talk a little bit about the agenda item about the annexation of the town of Emmett as you consider strategic discussion tonight. I wanted to just make you aware that, you know, it is a little bit of a challenge where, especially where I'm located on Boulder Road. It's such a low-lying area that there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be put into place. And what we're a little bit fearful of is what that's going to look like, what that's going to cost. And from my understanding, this particular municipal agreement that is in place for the town of Emmett is about 20 years old, and it was renegotiated with the city, between the city and the town, about 10 to 12 years ago. There was a packed house at that time, and it was very contentious. Many of the property owners in the town of Emmett didn't want to have anything to do with that, and we're still kind of in that situation. But we have a number of services that are being provided to us. It does seem as though the system isn't broken. So we're actually in a situation where the infrastructure costs might be so extravagant that the city might not be able to take that on in the near future. I'd like you to consider postponing that or renegotiating that with the town. And considering that the town has recently had a little turnover at the town hall, there might be some amenable folks in charge there that may allow for the city to do some better planning when it comes to infrastructure changes and budgeting that need to take place in that area. And the same thing is true for us homeowners. I'm asking for a little bit of grace and leniency so us homeowners can also plan for what it would cost in our own budget. And if it does make sense to possibly even amend the agreement so that Boulder Road and Center Street potentially aren't even in that particular agreement, that might make the most sense because of the cost associated with doing the infrastructure improvements there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Hartel? 214 South Washington.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, recently South Washington Street was rebuilt completely, and the contractors with the water, the stormwater, the curb and gutter, the paving, all seemed to be very considerate for us, for our people who lived in the neighborhood. They were careful, and they seemed to be very thorough with their work. I was home every day. I put up with the dust. I watched them, and I enjoyed seeing their high work standards. I commend them, and I would recommend that you consider using them on future projects. Second item I'd like to speak about is it was recently announced that T-Wall would not be building on South Water Street on the lot which they bought for $1. I would have paid you a lot more for that lot, by the way. And now the city will attempt to get it back. And when you do that, you will have a very unique opportunity to do the right thing. We already have four-story apartment buildings in 6 blocks along the river on North and South Water Street. And many city planners would say that putting apartments, especially that many, next to a river downtown is not very good or the best and highest use of the land. And if it is vacant as it is. Now, the one apartment building on South Water was originally a factory building which was reused, and that was an admirable reuse. I remember when the property at 217 was bought, I have a long memory, with parking meter money, and at that time, it was understood that it would be used for parking in perpetuity. Well, perpetuity hasn't lasted very long. I would submit that retail, restaurants, and apartments are not needed there at this time. Why can't this land be used for parking for the library and for Benson events when there's an overflow need? It could be made into a green parking area of some sort. Part of it might be grass and trees, and it would basically be some parkland. I would submit that many people feel the same way because I've been talking to them. We have enough apartments on North and South Water Street. River frontage and river views are touted as being of very high value for all to use and see. And this land should not be squandered on another apartment complex. Thank you.
Thank you.
Courtney O.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, I stand before you today not just as a resident of this community, but as a voice for a much-needed change in our collective mindset and practices. It is crucial that we address the concerns surrounding the safety and inclusion of LGBTQ individuals within our community, particularly when discrimination is perpetuated based on religious beliefs. Our community is diverse, made up of people with various faiths, backgrounds, and beliefs. It is this very diversity that should be embraced, celebrated, and respected. Discrimination against the LGBTQ community based on religious beliefs goes against the principles of inclusion, respect, and freedom that our nation was built upon. I would like to address a few essential points. Number one is safety. Every resident in Watertown deserves to feel safe within this community. Discrimination and prejudice can create an atmosphere of fear and anxiety, preventing individuals from fully participating in the life of our community. And I hear this very often from friends, loved ones who live in this community who identify as LGBTQ, that they don't feel safe to really be themselves in this community. Number two is inclusion. Inclusivity is not about forcing people to change their beliefs. It's about creating an environment where everyone is treated with respect and dignity. We can respect each other's right to differing beliefs while also recognizing the importance of ensuring equality and inclusion for all, not just a few. Supportive resources. Establishing resources for the LGBTQ individuals who face discrimination or harassment, ensuring they have avenues to seek help and support within the community. Community building. Creating opportunities for these individuals to connect with one another and with supportive allies. Community events and support groups can be a lifeline for those feeling isolated. In conclusion, our community's strength lies in our ability to grow and evolve, respecting the principles of democracy and individual liberties. Let us strive, the City of Watertown, to be a beacon of tolerance, respect, and inclusion for all. Our collective mission should be to make this community a safe haven for all, regardless of who they are or who they love. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anybody else? We do, is anyone that attending remotely would like to comment during public comment? We do have another opportunity at the end of our meeting as well. Let's move to reports. You have the Board of Health minutes from September 5th, Finance from September 25th, the RDA from September 27th, and Public Safety and Welfare from October 4th. Does anybody have comments or questions on the minutes? All right. Then let's go to communications and recommendations. If it's all right with everybody, could we take our October employee recognition first? Would that be okay? All right. Then let's go to our employee recognition for this evening. This evening, we are going to be recognizing Sandy in our city attorney's office for her 10 years of service. I'm going to invite Stephen and Sandy up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Cheeseborough. I'm the city attorney. This is Sandy. She's a paralegal in the city attorney's office here at the city of Watertown. She started with the city back in October of 2013 and has been here for 10 years. During that time, she's worked with 3 city attorneys and coordinated with several interim city attorneys. In preparation for tonight, since I haven't been here quite as long as Sandy has, I looked back at some of her prior employee reviews and was not surprised at all to see that over the years, all of the former city attorneys have viewed her as intelligent, helpful, kind, and essential member of the department. While I've only had the pleasure to work with Sandy for just under 2 years, I can easily say that I and the city are better off for her dedication here. When challenged with a complex legal process or given a new project, she typically performs beyond expectations. She points out potential errors she sees and works to prevent those errors in the future. And she helps out with every task within the city attorney's office, whether it's the typical thankless ones of decorating and making the place look nice, or just being a better place to work, or completing very complex tasks like compiling all the contracts for the city. I just have to say thank you, Sandy, for all that you have done for the city and that you continue to do for us. So, thank you. And then if her family would like to come up for a picture as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Come on up. One thing that Stephen mentioned but didn't really detail very much is there's no one in this building that decorates a better door than Sandy. Just wait till the Christmas time rolls around and she'll have like the most beautiful door in the whole building. So thank you, Sandy. All right, let's hop back then. This evening we have a discussion around the amendment of the EMID boundary agreement, some possible changes and priorities. I did touch base with a couple of people in the room ahead of the meeting, but I want to just mention it kind of factually for you all. We will have a big holistic meeting about the whole boundary agreement with the residents of the town of Emmett that are involved and with the town of Emmett. I think I informed you guys of that last time. That'll come right around the beginning of the new year. So I did want to let them know we're not having a big exhaustive discussion this evening, but based on some of the original conversations we've had with the Planning Commission and with you all, we were hearing, the kind of similar themes, and we wanted to take those themes and see if there was ideas we could surface for the next meeting that we have with the towns. So, Brian, are you able to? There you go. Brian is our zoning administrator. He is attending remotely this evening, and I believe you and the city attorney are going to kick us off, Brian?
Correct. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to start out with a quick summary and update of the last meeting we had with the town. That was on September 27th. We discussed well and septic abandonment costs for the annex residents. And the town also provided us with the ages of the septic system and wells. We talked about grant funding sources to abandon those wells and septic systems, and also for grant funding for utility connections. Those were a lot of cases were dependent on individual circumstances and were not something that was really universal. We discussed the draft of the property owner letter that we sent to the town, and we're still working on that. And we set the informational meeting for February 8th of 2024 to have that meeting the mayor was talking about. As far as the topic of the night with changes in priorities, the real main issue or concern is the one-year utility connection requirement in the boundary agreement. Obviously, budget-wise and logistic-wise, it's kind of difficult to accomplish it in that time frame. There's also the cost issues. We would likely need to extend that time frame for a connection once funding and engineering and construction costs are all ironed out. The city attorney has some options on how we can adjust this time frame, and I guess we're just looking for some direction on how to proceed with this utility connection issue. So I'll turn it over to Stephen, and he can fill you in on the rest.
So the three primary options would be to, one, work with the town of Emmett to enter into an amendment of the boundary agreements. That has a timeline of approximately 7 months at best case and over a year as a more practical timeline. That's just due to statutory requirements of noticing meetings and how long some of those plans have to be submitted before they can be adopted. Given that there's not currently an existing proposed amendment to the agreement, my expectation is that that would take closer to the year, if not longer than that, which does put us beyond the timeline right now for the properties joining the city. The secondary option would be to enforce the agreement as it stands and require that all members of the boundary agreements that join the city are required to hook up to the city sewer and water within the 1 year timeline. That would require special assessing each of the properties the full amount of the cost to install those systems and would be permitted under the law. The third option would be for the city to take a more broad interpretation of the agreement and require that those parties each connect to the sewer system and water system within 1 year of those systems becoming available at their local lots. That would permit the individuals to maintain their private systems until such time as somebody has put in the sewer and water systems to reach their properties, with the city being the party that's likely to be in best position or priority to enforce the agreements. It would have that option to hold off on requiring that hookup. The biggest risk of doing it that route instead of entering into the amendment of the boundary agreement with Emmett is that any future council would be able to say, okay, time's up, we're putting in the lines now, and they have to connect within a year. Or any of the residents would be able to say that they want to hook up to the city water and sewer, pay for it to be extended, and then back charge the neighboring property owners. So it does take some of that control out of the city's hands. But those are kind of the three main options that I see existing at this point.
So we have another meeting coming up with the town, I think within a week or so, and what we were supposed to do, one of the homework items was to talk to the full council, and then the town of Emmett is supposed to talk to their town board, and then kind of come back to that meeting with one of these recommendations. You know, are we going to just continue, as Stephen said? Are we going to take a broader interpretation of it, or will we work to amend it? So that's what I'm looking for from you this evening, and we don't have to be, unanimous, obviously. I'm just looking, we're not voting or anything, I'm just looking for your general feedback on which approach you'd like me to carry back to the meeting with the town of Emmett. Mr. Lampe.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
And a couple of these are probably going to be kind of pointed. I'm used to doing this more in a closed session where we have an opportunity to chat with our council a little bit closer. Under option 2, under the enforcement piece, who's the enforcing agency?
The city would be.
So there is the agreement written that there's like an enforced assessment if you don't hook up within a year, or what's the mechanism that is in the agreement?
They would be in violation of the agreement, and the city would be able to especially assess their properties to force the hookup.
Okay. In option 1, where we talk about essentially, it sounds like the agreement would continue to be in place, but essentially we'd have a staggered adoption timeframe based on when the city actually builds the infrastructure to that lot line.
That was
So-
option 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Option 1 was working with the town to do a formal amendment, and that could take 7 months to
Yep.
over a year. Option
Yes,
3 was
option 3.
essentially take the agreement we have now and I would say a little bit more judiciously enforce it, so to give us a time frame to get the infrastructure put in the ground, and then say you need to connect within a year of the infrastructure being in front of you, in front of your home. So you're speaking to the third one? Okay.
My number's backwards based
That's
on our
okay.
previous numbering.
Would you repeat that then?
Okay, so based on option 3, the last one that you talked about, where basically the one-year piece of the agreement would be in place, depending on the city getting the infrastructure essentially to the lot line. Are there any requirements left on the city to actually perform getting that infrastructure out there at any particular time, or is that just open-ended at that point?
It would initially be open-ended. If any property owner decided that they wanted to hook up to the city sewer or water, they would be able to kind of force the city to move forward or move up plans to extend it out to that location. Again, the city would then be able to specially assess that individual for that cost, and there would likely be an agreement where the other property owners would then have to reimburse that property owner for a portion of the cost over that next year as they hook up.
Can I clarify one thing? The agreement as it stands right now does not require the city to put in infrastructure.
Correct.
What it requires is that it's quite silent. What it says is, within a year of annexing in, these property owners must have water and sewer. How they get there is what's silent in the agreement. So we're all saying, doesn't appear to be any viable option to get there unless the city is the one taking on a contractor and an engineering firm. Because to have individual property owners do that seems quite insurmountable. I just want to clarify that, though. There's nothing that requires us to do that, but I think we all are acknowledging that it seems pretty difficult to do the alternative. Other thoughts, questions? Yes, Mr. Schmidt?
So one of the issues that we're going to run into with this, because you're dealing with private well and sewer, is those have to be inspected by the DNR on a regularly scheduled basis. And if the residents are already being told they're not going to get renewed because this is in the works, that's going to force somebody's hand whether we're ready for it or not. So I'm not liking the fact that we have no idea what those timeframes are with those individual properties. So we don't know if they just got renewed or if they're already been told they're not going to be renewed. So when their time is up for their current permit, they're going to be forced to move forward whether they're ready or not, or whether we're ready or not. And not having a clear warm and fuzzy with the town of Emmett to making sure there's a clear understanding who's responsible for what financially, that's a significant issue because it's not clearly spelled out. And that's one of my biggest concerns is it's relatively silent, as you pointed out, that it doesn't say. And that's
Doesn't-
concerning because that's like lots, that's
It
millions of
doesn't
dollars.
say who should take on the improvement facilitation. It's very clear in the agreement that the cost is borne solely by the landowner.
That's my
So that part's
concern.
clear. What's unclear is how they get there.
Right, because if you have individual landowner, individual contracts, you got 10 properties, they all get different contractors.
exactly.
You have a serious issue of consistency in regards to the process.
Yeah.
So without having a clear understanding of how that plays out, or these permitting with the state in regards to how that works for their timelines, I would be more inclined to push for option 1 to make them and us come together at the table and create a clear amendment that states clearly who does what, when, and how, not just ambiguously just throw something out there and hope it works right.
Brian, do you know, and I'm not holding you to knowing, but just by chance, do you know anything about Mr. Schmidt's question? If people's inspections are due, would this provide a barrier to that? Brian?
Send it to the county. The
Okay.
county is the one that really kind of maintains that stuff for the DNR. I guess, these systems are average 20 to 30 years, depending on how they're maintained. But most of these systems, as information we got from the town, most of these systems are in the 20-year or plus range. So they're not new. There's one that's fairly new, but the rest are quite a bit older. So that day will come sooner rather than later when they need to hook up.
Others? Yes.
I think we might have discussed this last time, but do we have an estimate for extending the sewer
Yeah.
water?
It's in the packet materials we previously provided. It's going to vary based on what road you're on. And it varies based on where what's needed on that roadway. And there are best estimates. They're high on purpose. Brian will say that all the time, but they were in the packet materials last time. I believe for like those folks on Water Street, it's just a connection to the main that's already there. So that's, a matter of a few $1,000s, $5,000. For those that are in other areas, the range is quite substantial.
Do we know how many residences we're talking about?
Yeah, Brian, I know the number that's jumping in my head is 28 parcels, but I think Brian, do you have that information? Otherwise, I bet I have it too.
I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's not that many houses. I'd say it's less than 20.
I can count the addresses if you'd like me to answer that, but I'll need someone else to keep talking while I count.
20 is good enough.
I could be high on it. $18, not 28. Stephen, your screen is up. You know that, right? Thank you. Ms. Davis?
In regards to option number 1, apart from the possibility that coming to an agreement will take longer than a year, are there any other risks to coming together and working on an amendment? Any other factors that would indicate that wouldn't be a wise thing to do?
I'm going to pitch that one to you.
No, worst case, the parties are unable to come to any additional agreement and the current agreement stands. We would always still have the options of either option 2 or 3
Right.
if we tried to go through one and were unsuccessful. Best case scenario, option 1 opens a lot more options for us and we can explore what other.
So if that one takes longer, so right now we're just under a year. We're supposed to execute this by like September 28th or something of 2024. So if it takes longer than that, what happens?
The parties would decide as to what date is the effective date of the amendment. And that would either be retroactively applied, or if the parcels have already been annexed into the city, would focus on making changes to just the connection requirements or other
So there's no
provisions.
like enforcement from DOA or anything like that to proceed?
No.
Okay.
So
Mr. Blanky?
if we do choose option 1 and choose to renegotiate this or add an amendment in some way with the town of Emmett, and we do go beyond, it's not automatic on the 28th that this annexation
That's what I was
occurs. The
asking.
council still needs to take some action on that, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
I was thinking
There
the
would
same
be a joint meeting with the town of Emmett and the city of Watertown regarding the boundary agreement, and then any proposed agreement would then come back to the city council for final approval. That then has to be sent to the state for permission and approval by the state.
Yes. Oh, all of you at once. I'm going to go to, I did, go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Fiscal year 24 budget, we have set aside some for managing this or
Surveying, yeah.
So my question is, what kind of city resources are involved in a renegotiation, in working through this amendment?
Me, Stephen, Brian?
Substantial staff time in terms of preparing the documents and going to the meetings to discuss it, notices in terms of sending out to all the parties that are involved, depending on how long the meetings last, sometime there. It's more the statutory requirements of the time than any substantially large investment.
Yeah, I would give the same answer. Mr. Board?
So if all but one of these 18 are in excess of 20 years, end of life, is what Brian said, what happens if one of these fails before June of next year?
I've asked that question many times.
What answer have you been given?
I haven't been given one.
Generally, what the DNR will do is review the situation and determine if or not they will renew the permit for either the septic or well. If they determine that it's not appropriate to reissue the permit for sewer, septic, or well, then they'll require a hookup. The property owner can usually get an exemption if the city provides notice that it's not physically possible at that time. To the extent that the DNR refuses to issue such an exemption, then that individual ends up having to arrange to have well and septic added to their property line and pays for that cost. And then gets reimbursed that cost that they front as other members and property owners sign in and connect to the property. or
The
to septic
difficulty
system.
is even under, perfect circumstances, we execute, this thing would get executed, there's still a year. So I'm always like, what happens on day one? Like, what if someone breaks the day after we all agree to this agreement? What happens to them? I mean, that's how I've kind of couched the conversation. And neither answer is a good one, because you wouldn't want the DNR to permit them, because now they're going to invest tens of thousands of dollars in something that, without any other action, they'd have to essentially abandon in short order. So it's not a good scenario there either. Mr. Lampe, did you have your hand up?
I did. Are you good?
No.
For the moment.
I don't have another question.
So one of the things that struck me in terms of the preparation that was done, and this is going back to the council packet back on September 8th, we had 3 listed options to fund water and sewer. We had the special service area, we had the special assessment district, and there was one with regard to a payback agreement that I wasn't necessarily sure was applicable here, because a lot of the language there was about a developer, and I don't think that's exactly what we're doing here. So as it pertains to the options that were presented tonight, I mean, are we still in a position that if we were going to move forward in like 2027 or some future year, that basically we can pull one of these things off the shelf and just basically start like a 20-year, I don't know what we said, 10, 15, I don't know what the appropriate term is, but basically pick a termed special service area or special assessment district? Are we basically allowed to sort of have separate ones for different connections, or do you have to basically take out one and use it for the entire area?
We would typically take out one and use it for the entire area. It wouldn't necessarily, to the extent that it's not a designated area. So we could do it by street and have different ones for each of the street areas, but we wouldn't be able to do one for parcel A on street and one for parcel B on street.
Do that for like an extension to get to an area, but we couldn't do it for a per parcel because we have to add them.
Correct.
So the reason I'm poking at that one is I'm trying to explore essentially how chunky your options are under 3, because it kind of sounds like if we decide that, again, in 2026 or so, we're going to go pick up 3 houses over there, we can create a special assessment or a special service area for those houses. But it's not like we can go like 1 or 2 down the street easily.
No, it would have to be the street.
Yes.
So refresh my memory, in these estimates that we had, which are high intentionally, does that include a street reconstruction? Because that's going to have to be included, because if we're ripping it up to put all these sewer lines in and all this out there, just cutting and patching the road is going to look like trash, and we're going to have to rebuild it anyways. And I know we're limited to how many square feet we can fully reconstruct in the year. How does that factor in as well? Because that's another cost that would need to be, because it's curb and gutter and sidewalk and all this stuff.
So we normally would do a trench. That's what we do right now in any of our water work, is a trench off the edge of the road, of the curb line. Brian, these numbers include the trench?
That includes everything,
Yeah.
full restoration of the
Restoration.
street, everything.
But it's.
And laterals to the right-of-way edge.
Yeah. So, yes is the short answer. Others?
Okay, so I do have
Yeah, please.
I find it interesting that one of the options was not to walk away from the agreement.
Well, we would need to amend it
Is
to walk
that not,
away from it.
I mean, is that option one?
I mean, I think it would have to be amended. We'd have to take some action still to walk away from it.
To walk away from the agreement, we would have to go through option one. To not annex in the properties. As of right now, the default is the properties will annex into the city in September of 2024 if nobody takes any action, just because of the way that the agreement has been established so far.
Others? So if you were to say, Emily, carry this back to that meeting, what's the carry back?
3.
3? Ms. Davis, what are you thinking?
I would order them 1, 3, 2.
Okay. Where are you at? Over here.
I'm 3-1-2.
Oh, criminy. 1, 3, 2.
I'm in agreement with Alderman Davis.
As am I.
I'm gonna take your, okay. I'm just kind of show a handsy. No one feels like you have to say anything.
1, 3, 2.
Okay. So I'm hearing generally, feel free anyone to reach out after this meeting too, but I'm hearing generally work with the town to amend. So then what I would, if I work with them to amend, I'd love to know, and I don't necessarily need them now, but I will need to know what you want to see there. I'm assuming you want to see a push out of time, but maybe you want to see an abolition. Like I'll need some awareness of what those changes that we would propose would be. Does that make sense? Brian, do you know when we meet with the town again?
I believe it's next week, Tuesday.
So if you all could send ideas to me, I'd sure appreciate that. Yes, sir.
This might be a question for Brian. At that meeting, can we get the exact timeframes for both sewer and water, or for the wells? Because I know those are 2 different timelines. So we have some kind of idea what we're working with for when they were renewed and when they're coming due.
I did write that down, or I wrote down do the inspections have an influence there. Brian got data from the county that talks about how old the systems are for the information they had, right, Brian?
Yeah, we have some well data, not all of them, because some of them had been drilled well before they started collecting that data. But the ones that are on the list, that those are also fairly old in the 20-year range. I don't recall there being any real recent ones. So I think these people have kind of been, expecting that they're going to have to connect, so they maybe not put investment into those facilities.
Do you want
Just a
more,
guess.
do you want more information than that?
Like, wells last a lot longer, but it's the septics that I'm more concerned about.
And I don't think, you requested that, right, if they had it, Brian?
Yeah, we have everything that's available.
Yeah, we
and
tried to
I would
get
say
it.
only maybe
We
half of the
couldn't.
wells we have information on.
So we tried to get all the age information for the wells and the septic, and all we could get back was some information only about wells.
I find that difficult. The DNR's got to have that because the septic's got to get inspected if they're off.
I think you just
power.
asked the county, right?
Yeah, the septic information we have dates on, I think, all of them, maybe
Oh,
one
I
we don't.
misspoke.
The well information is a little more spotty, that came right from the DNR. And it's like, so maybe half of them, we have some dates on the wells, the rest are unknown.
Okay.
So I think the ask, Brian, is if you could accumulate that and send it out to everybody. Just the
Sure
ages.
can.
The septic's the more important one for sure.
Okay. So send me ideas, your thoughts, what you want to see changed. Make sure, just send them to Brian and I if you think of it, and then we'll take that back to the meeting and we'll provide another update. Is this working for everybody for updating and keeping you in the loop at this point? All right, then we'll bring an update after that meeting back here. Any last parting thoughts? All right, okay. Thank you for the conversation, you guys. Brian, thank you for joining, and then we can chat tomorrow, but we'll plan on that follow-up with everybody.
Okay.
And then for anybody, just anyone else in the room on this topic, as you just heard, we'll meet with the town again next week, provide some ideas. They should be having on the town board agenda a similar discussion around what changes they'd like to see. So That was the homework we both had when we both left that meeting. So hopefully you've seen something similar, or will see something similar at the town board meeting for a discussion as well. So you'll see this back on our agenda again, kind of after we have that meeting. Okay, all right, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the fire department monthly report. Any questions for Chief Tesh?
I have a couple.
Yes, Mr. Board.
Chief, what's, your outreach to citizens tripled between 22 and 23. What's going on?
We're really focusing on some stuff there, and Deputy Chief Rotterberg and one of our administrative assistants, Stephanie Mazzoni, has been doing a lot of, they've been going to the farmers market every Tuesday and outreaching with people there. They've been going to do talks for different civic groups and things like that, just trying to get more contact with the community.
Anything you want to add to that back there? I mean, your son came, you might as well see you. Fire prevention.
What's coming up for this month, we started early as well, so getting a lot of grade school students, and that's going to help bump that number as well.
And last year, we didn't have the opportunity to do as much fire prevention. We focused and staffed a little bit more.
Yep.
So there's been more of an effort around that.
We've actually made an effort to reach out to every first grade class in the city this year with a letter inviting them to either come to the station or we'll go to their classroom for a tour.
That's
So,
great.
focusing just on that age group.
Any other questions on the fire department report?
I have a suggestion for a graph that would be interesting. I don't know. I would like to see a comparison of maybe a line graph of fire calls and then as opposed to like assist to your EMS calls. I'm wondering, are we seeing fire calls go down while we're seeing EMS go up?
I think they've been holding pretty steady at about 80%, 20%. I think last year it was 79, 21. We can make a graph or look at that. Are you looking like over time or just month to month or like comparison of September of this year?
I'm still trying to get my mind around the fact that every month we have an increase. Every month we're having an increase. But you're doing so much outreach with fire prevention, you would hope that at some point we're seeing a decrease somewhere. And I'd like to identify, with all the work that you're putting into this, where are we seeing, the benefits of that? Because surely it's there, you would hope.
Sure. We can work on some kind of graph for that.
Anybody else on this one? All right. Then let's move to new business. Only one item here this evening, and that is a committee appointment for the Transit Commission. Is there a motion on this one?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Board, second by Mr. Bartz. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, our next is the accounts payable. Mr. Moldenhauer's not here, so I'm going to need someone to pipe up on this one. Is there a motion on the accounts?
I'll move that we pay all accounts.
Motion by Mr. Blanky, second by Mr. Bartz. Mr. Bartz.
Yeah, I move to amend accounts payable to add a payment for $89,611.13 to K&K Masonry. It's outlined on a memo that everyone is given today. The accounting, I think, is on the backside of the memo.
Very good. Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Lampy. Any questions on the amendment? Are you fine on voice vote on that? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so now we're at an amended version of the accounts. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Megan?
Blanky,
Aye.
Smith. Schmid. Wetzel. Davis. Lampy. Board.
Aye.
Bartz.
Aye.
Motion passed 8-0.
Thank you. Let's move to miscellaneous business. You have the payroll summary from September 20th to October 3rd and cash and investment ending September 30th. Any comments or questions on those? All right, then let's move to ordinances. We just have one for this evening. It's ordinance 23-23. This is to amend section 500-10 Paren D in our city code. This is here from Ms. Davis in Public Safety and Welfare on its first reading. Ms. Davis.
I make a motion for ordinance 2323 to approve it.
Motion by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Board. Mr. Blanky.
I'd like to make a motion to amend this ordinance change, formerly line 5, currently line 4 on this version. Westbound traffic onto Gateway Drive shall not make a left turn onto South Church Street. Seeing as how Gateway Drive no longer intersects South Church Street, and that would be physically impossible to do, I would recommend, or actually I would move that we strike that.
Strike all of item 4.
Yes.
Is there a second to his amendment? Second by Mr. Bartz. Any questions on the amendment? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, so now we're at an amended version of ordinance 23-23. Thanks for catching that. Any comments or questions? Megan?
Blanky. Oh, I'm sorry. Davis.
Aye.
Lampy. Board. Bartz. Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Schmid. Wetzel. Motion passed 8-0.
Very good. Let's move to resolutions. We have 2 this evening. First is Exhibit 9544. This is a resolution requesting exemption from the Jefferson County Library tax for Wisconsin statute 43.64, Paren 2, Paren B. This is here from me. Mr. Blanky.
I'll move to approve Exhibit 9544.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Lampy. Any questions on this one? This is our annual movement on these 2 items. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And our next is Exhibit 9545. This is also a resolution requesting exemption, this time from the Dodge County library tax. Also here from me. Is there a motion on this one?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wetzel, second by Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we are at the point in our agenda, we have an opportunity for comment from those present. If anyone would like to comment? Anyone like to comment remotely? All right, with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Schmid, second by Mr. Bartz. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.